G'day, it's Lindsay Waddington here. Today I'm very excited to speak to this gentleman here. There's not much more you can achieve in the world of music, and it's a real honour to sit here and have a chat with him today. Mr. Louie Shelton.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Thanks for coming along, Louie.
Yes.
And mate, I'd love to sort of just have a casual chat and what sort of made this legend that sits right beside me.
Oh, well, let's see if I can remember anything. It's been quite a road that I've been down, starting from the backwoods of Arkansas, and ended up out there, dealing with all those stars in Hollywood. I didn't know quite how to handle that, but I was lucky to battle myself through it. Started out as a young guitar player. I got my first guitar at 9 years old. And by the time I was 12, I was playing professional and joined a country band for a couple of years. And then rock and roll came in. I got to meet Elvis Presley when he first came out. And then living in Little Rock, which is close to Memphis and Nashville, we used to get all of those new artists come through Little Rock, the Jerry Lee Lewis and the Roy Orbison and Carl Perkins and Elvis. So we jumped on the rock and roll bandwagon at that point. And as I would be introduced to different kinds of music, like someone came and asked me, have you ever heard of a guitar player by the name of Barney Kessel or Wes Montgomery or Johnny Smith? I said, oh no, I've only heard Chet Atkins. Well, so I'd go buy those records and learn a little bit of jazz, and I would incorporate that into my playing. And of course, then over the next several years, I played in clubs 6 nights a week for years, and which builds up your chops, and you're playing all of the hits of the day. So I ended up in California and was lucky enough to play on that first Monkees hit, The Last Train to Clarksville. And that got my foot in the door for session work. And from then on for the next, 60s, 70s, and 80s, I was lucky enough to play with a lot of great artists and made some really good records during that time.
Now, that's incredible, Louie, but where you come from in Arkansas, a very humbling upbringing, mate, not like living in mansions, everything thrown at your footsteps. You come through and really had to work for this, didn't you?
Yes. I think the guitar, sort of took me out of the backwoods and through all of the great things that I've experienced because of the love of guitar. As soon as I got it for my 9th birthday, I loved playing so much, and I was just starved to learn everything I could. And in the beginning, it was mostly Chet Atkins stuff. And but I always considered myself a student of the guitar. I just wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And at the same time, paying attention to what other guitar players did, how they managed what they played. Like Steve Cropper, for example, who played on all of those great Sitting on the Dock of the Bay and all of the hits he played on, where the guitar parts that he added became part of the record. And if you heard the song without that guitar, it wouldn't be the same.
Absolutely.
And I get so much of that from the stuff that I played on, like the solo from Lionel Richie's Hello, the stuff with Boss Skaggs on Low Down, and on and on and on. I took that thought with me into the studio, that I want to think like an arranger. I don't want to go in there and show everybody how much I can play. I want to listen to the song and figure out what does it need. Sometimes it didn't need anything except play and rhythm, but other times you just throw little stuff in there, and usually the producer would like it, and it would end up on the record. So, yeah, I always was conscientious of playing the right thing at the right time and leaving the spaces where they need to be spaces, you know.
Can you remember what the very first song was? It was like you heard it, whether it was on the radio or something, you're like, oh, that's got me hooked.
I'm sure it would have been Clarksville because that was the first hit that I played on.
Yeah.
And it went to #1. And then after that, it was the Jackson 5. And that all of a sudden went to #1 straight away. That tune, I Want You Back. That was the first record we did with them, the first tune we did with them.
Was that, and what you played on that, was that sort of inspired by you, or they sort of give you the idea, or no, they just come out, Louie, it come to you?
Well, in those situations, like the Jackson 5 weren't there. I mean, he's 11 years old, so
yeah.
he's not going to be in there telling me what to play.
Yeah.
It was the writers and producers, but it was basically us 5 musicians in there working out our parts, you know. We had a rough chord chart, and the writer was there that could kind of sing the song, and we would work out the parts we were going to play. It was never a situation where what I played is written out as notes on paper. And it's a good thing because I wasn't a reader. I play strictly by ear.
Oh, wonderful, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys like me and Glen Campbell and JamesBurton, none of us we didn't read notes. We grew up in country music and, you know, playing, you know, just basic chords. Some of the other players like Barney Kessel, Howard Roberts, and Tommy Tedesco, they were session players that could read, you know, and but they came from a jazz background. They didn't play the rock and roll and all of the other stuff that we played. You know, it was, they were great at what they did, but they didn't do the kind of stuff that they would be required for a tune like Last Train to Clarksville, you know. Yeah. They were great musicians, but they didn't grow up playing that kind of stuff where we did, you know, because we played the hits of the day in the clubs 6 nights a week. So we were familiar with that, you know, approach.
I'd have to say, growing up, like from myself, and that's what I talk about a lot because you can, you know, that's what you know. Growing up in my life, something that was very influential, and it was all over Rage, all over all the music platforms of the time, was Hello, Lionel Richie's hit. Now, that there you were saying that was, there was a desk tape that was sent out to other guitar players?
Yes, three other guitar players. They sent them a cassette and said, Lionel Richie hummed this guitar solo that he wants you to play on this record. And so they would learn that solo and come in and record it. And for some reason, it didn't work, you know, and so they kept going from guitar player to guitar player, and they finally got to me and sent me the cassette, and I learned the solo that he had hummed, and I went in and played it, and Lionel wasn't there yet, so I said, I don't really like that solo. I said, just give me another track and I'll give you another option. And so the solo that's on the record was the next thing that I played, and that was just off the top of my head, you know, just something other than what he's saying, you know, because I didn't think it worked as a guitar solo.
Yeah.
And that's what came on the record. And
was it true when you were doing it, he was walking down the hallway?
Yeah, he was just coming in toward the end of the solo, and he said, I don't know what I heard walking down the hall, but it sounded like a hit record to me. Yeah.
That must have made you feel really good.
It did, yes, because I was, you know, I was in there thinking, oh, they just got me playing on a ballad. I wish they'd let me play something like, you know, but they had Steve Lukather in on some of the other All Night Long and some of those other hits. He's a very capable player too, you know.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Isn't it amazing though? The one that's would have been part of this life-defining thing, because it is one of the greatest guitar solos of all time, that solo. So isn't it funny how you were wishing you were playing one of the other ones, but yet the one that they put you on and what you come up with?
Yes. I left there thinking that, that was just a ballad and nothing will ever happen with it.
Yeah.
And so while I was doing that solo, the guy who played the synthesizers on the record was setting up to do that part. And I ran onto him a few weeks later at the NAMM show, and he said, that song you played on, I think it's going to be a hit. I just heard it on the radio. And that was a shock to me. I think, that would never be a hit,
Yeah.
It's just a ballad. It ended up being his best-selling single.
Well,
all of them.
For me, being a guitar player, I would say that you probably made it a hit, like the guitar solo made it, don't you reckon?
Well, a lot of people say it wouldn't be the same without that solo.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Now, there's been so many stars, Louie. We'll try and get across a few so everyone around the world watching can get a real appreciation. A lot will already know who you are because your work is just known so great. But for the people that don't, Whitney Houston, I think I've read credits where you worked on Whitney stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, what a couple of songs there, mate.
Saving All My Life and The Greatest Love. And I don't remember all of the hits, but I just remember because I was working with Michael Masser, the guy that produced and wrote those things. I had worked with him on Diana Ross's theme from Mahogany. That was the first time I met Michael. And we did a couple of Diana Ross songs with Michael Masser. And he's the one that did the Whitney Houston stuff.
That's insane.
What a great artist she was,
Yeah.
Such a beautiful lady, and I mean, no one can sing
What
like
a set of pipes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
unbelievable.
was it like just to let people know the insight, like sitting there, was Whitney, were you ever subjected to tracks where she was in the studio at the same time and you were just forgot what you were doing?
No, she wasn't there at all. We cut all that stuff, and then she came in later and put her voice on.
What a trust.
And that was often the case. The Jackson 5 were never there. The people that were always there was like Karen and Richard Carpenter for all of their stuff. And she was always giving us a great vocal. So good that it could have gone on the record because she never sang a bad note in her life. She was always there. None of the Motown artists were ever there.
Wow.
Except Marvin Gaye when we did the album with him. He was there because he was the producer. And so it was great that I got to actually play for Marvin Gaye.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's Get It On, that album. And but other than that, the Motown artists were never there. I'd have to ask the producer, who is this record for? Yeah. And he would say, "Oh, this is for Diana," or this, whoever. He'd name some other Motown artist, and so you'd kind of think, "Oh yeah, I can hear them singing that." But Neil Diamond was always there.
He would have been very hands-on. He gives me the impression that he very musical, and knew exactly what he wanted. Is that true? In some ways, but in other ways, he was kind of still writing the song, and we would try a lot of different approaches to it. But he was very involved. Even though he didn't come in and say, "Here's the way it goes," he would come in and say, "Here's this idea I have, and I'd like to approach it a few different ways," And so we would go through that until we got
something that he said, yeah, that's it. You know,
Yeah.
let's make it. Yeah, he was one of the very hands-on in that way.
Well, last time you were around here and we were having a yak, I remember you saying one big moment you had was working with Barbra Streisand.
We had a full orchestra.
Yeah.
3 different arrangers and all the strings and the horns and all of that. And she didn't want to record that way. She had all of those guys go out of the studio, and she came over with me and the drummer and the piano player, and we ran through the songs. And she wanted to be part of that process instead of just saying, all right, here's the music, now you go out there and sing. She didn't want to record that way. So after we kind of worked it all out, then they said, okay, bring the guys back in and we'll record it. That was the way it worked with her, yeah.
That must have been like another moment where you're like, I'm working with somebody great here. Yeah.
It truly was, because it had been several years that you know, she had come out with her first record, People, you know, which is one of the greatest records and greatest vocals performances ever. And I was really a big fan of hers. So to actually be sitting there with her working on a song was you know, of course that often happened for you know, because when we come from humble beginnings in the backwoods of Arkansas, and now we're sitting here with Barbra Streisand, you know, you can't sort of give the impression that you're really, you know, overwhelmed by this, but you're actually, there's something in there that's saying,
how did this happen?
I'm so blessed, you know, to be here in this situation.
Your parents, like your family, Louie, they must have been like, I can't imagine how they must have been feeling, like seeing their boy do this on the world stage and have the biggest stars in the world. Like there's a story saying that one of these huge stars were trying to chase you down. You're in Australia holidaying.
Yeah.
And when you got back to America, it was nearly like, oh, thank God you come home. You know?
Yeah. That's still the way, even though, you know, I've lost my mom and dad many years ago and all that, but I still have families, you know, sisters and nieces and nephews, and they're just so appreciative of what I've done. And we communicate all the time on, you know, Facebook, even though we're spread all over the world, you know, we're in touch with each other, and they see stuff that I do, and they always comment on it, and they're very proud. That it means a lot to them, that especially them knowing the humble beginnings.
Anything's possible?
Yeah. Where I came from, the backwoods of Arkansas, and what I achieved as a professional, you know, musician. They're very proud of that.
The show is called Did You Know with Waddo, so I think we better tell a few people about some other things. You've got a love for something else, not just music, do you?
Well, yes. When we were in Las Vegas in the 60s, you know, they have the greatest golf courses in the world there. And I was working with Seals and Crofts. Before they were Seals and Crofts, we were playing in the casinos. And they got me into golf. And so I guess I became addicted to it. And so that's something that I've enjoyed all these years. And when I'm not doing music, I'm playing golf, you know. And that's, you know, we were playing golf when it wasn't a popular thing to do for a musician. It's because they dressed so weird and all of that kind of stuff. But, you know, you'd be surprised at the musicians who golf is a big part of their life. Vince Gill, he was going to be a professional golfer. That's
was
how
he really?
Good he wanted to be a golfer. Even going back to like Johnny Mathis and those guys, you know. But I'm trying to think of who's the rock and roll guy that has the snakes and all of that kind of stuff.
Alice Cooper?
Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
He's an incredible golfer.
Is he really?
Oh, yeah, yeah. The Eagles, they played on all the golf tournaments and all that. One of the funniest things, and this, of my golf experiences, I was in LA after the O.J. Simpson thing. And me and a couple of my buddies, we go out to play golf. And we get there, and the group in front of us is O.J. Simpson, because he couldn't play anymore at the big club where he was adjoined, because he this was after the trial, and he won, and nobody would let him play on their courses, so he's on this public course. And we go to tee off, and they say, well, that's O.J. Simpson in that group in front of you up there. And so we had to follow O.J. Simpson around. And as an athlete, he had the worst golf swing I've ever seen. I thought, with his money and being an athlete, go get a golf lesson. That looks it's horrible.
You haven't played with me, mate. I can get it on the green, but I can't putt the bloody thing. And we're laughing before having a coffee, saying that putting, that can be very frustrating, can't it?
Yeah, yes. Well, we just had the Ryder Cup yesterday, and you could see how important it was there to make putts or to miss a putt. You know, it was everything.
Yeah.
You know.
Have you ever thrown a club?
No, not really. I handle it pretty well. You know, I don't do a lot of cursing and all that, because I usually ride with my wife, and she does enough for both of us. So.
I'm going to follow you around on the golf course there. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, no, it's and I don't know whether it's true, but I've also heard you don't mind fishing.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, of course, from Arkansas, you know, that's how we grew up, you know. We used to fish because that's what we needed for food, you know. It wasn't like we would go to the store and buy some fish. We actually had to go out and fish for fish. But no, I've enjoyed that, and many years of getting out there and getting baked in the sun, and you can tell by my sun specs now that I've damaged myself from between golf and fishing. The sun's really done a lot of damage, so I have to go to the sun doctor every once in a while, get something cut off. Yeah. But yeah, that was one of the things that attracted me to Australia. As I was working with some musicians, I was producing a band in LA, and two of the members were from Sydney, and they kept telling me how great the fishing and golf was in Sydney. And that, you know, it was tempting. So I had to go check it out. We got down to Sydney and actually moved there and lived right on the harbor, right on Middle Harbor, right over the Spit Bridge and the marina, and I had a 34-foot sport fishing boat. And we'd out Sydney Heads and out to the reefs and catching some...
Holy moly.
Some great fish.
Yeah.
Oh, great fish. Yeah.
And you had two bites of this moving to Australia, true, Louie? Like you come out and did that, and then you actually went back to America?
Yeah, well, our first time down, we didn't plan to stay that long. We figured we would stay 5 years as our kids finished high school. And we ended up staying 12 years in Sydney. And because of family issues and stuff, we moved back. And at that time, we moved to Nashville. And I set my studio up in Nashville, and we stayed there for 10 years. And then my son and daughter moved back to the Gold Coast, and we decided to move back to be with them.
And you reckon you'll be in Australia now for the rest of the time? You don't know?
Yes.
Don't want to head back?
That's pretty definite.
Pretty definite?
Yeah.
Music's been a wonderful thing. There was another thing I picked up in our conversation before, and I love paying tribute to people that help people. Now, you were saying, like, as we've touched on, you know, you come from humble beginnings and that, but there was a couple that actually saw something in you at a show Louie, you were backing people and that on a show and that?
Yeah, we had a Saturday night jamboree that was very similar to the Grand Ole Opry and in the big auditorium in Little Rock. And there was it was structured just like the Grand Ole Opry, except most of the artists were local artists. They could only afford one named artist every Saturday night. But we had people like Johnny Cash. Well, we had Merle Travis, Hank Thompson, Hank Snow, the Louvin brothers, a lot of really well-known, most people wouldn't know today, those guys, but they were big in the day. So every Saturday we would have one of those major artists. And there was a band on there called Shelby Cooper and the Dixie Mountaineers, which was Shelby, who played a Martin guitar, and his wife, Sarah Jane, played fiddle, and her brother played the upright bass. And they asked me to come join their band because they had a radio show 5 days a week, and that plus this Saturday night thing. And then when TV came out, they had a Wednesday night TV show. So I joined that band at 12 years old. And that really shaped my future because I was with them for 2 years and it was all just music. And at the end of those 2 years, I was
Knew what you wanted to do. Yeah. And that show you're talking about there, that was the first time you saw Elvis Presley.
No, actually, we were in a little town in Pine Bluff, Arkansas with that band. And Elvis came to my junior high school and played for about 200 people. He was just starting. He just had his first record out. And so that was the first time any of us had seen his
brand
performance.
Yeah.
Because we had only seen country stars that just stood up there and sang and played. We'd never seen anyone jumping all over the stage like that. But I got to see Elvis. The next time he played was at the big auditorium in Little Rock where we played on Saturday night. And I got to see him several times there. And because they knew me at the auditorium, I'd get backstage so I could hang out with Elvis. And he was such a nice, friendly guy, and was going around backstage just singing silly songs and stuff. Just the nicest guy, you know. If I brought along a friend and introduced him, he'd say, "Oh yeah," you know, just it never was like
not too hard for him to.
No, he was very, very approachable.
Yeah. Did you find that, like, you know, because I once again speak from my experience, you watch all these megastars you're talking about and yourself, you know, this is sort of a pinch yourself moment for me talking to you, and we're going to be looking at music later on. It's an amazing thing, but are those people all approachable? Most of them on a whole, they're all approachable, Louie, like the stardom doesn't get them?
I found most of them were very nice that I worked with. They were probably a bit put off if they were at a restaurant and people come up and bother
invading
them, which was often the case, you know, for most of those people. It'd be hard for them to go out. I mean, even myself, when I was doing cruises. If I'd be on a cruise ship for a week, and it might be going from, say, Fiji to Tahiti. Well, for the first 3 days I'm on there, nobody knows me, you know, because they've never heard of Louie Shelton or anything. And so I could go around and was comfortable dining out in all the places and all that. But after my show, because I did a lot of the songs that I had played on, and these people all of a sudden are fans, you know, I couldn't even go out and eat in the public places anymore. I'd have to have room service because no matter how much I would try to go out and have a meal, you know, there's people, can I have a photo with, did you really play with, you know, and all that. And I mean, bless their heart, they're, you know, I can't blame, I can't fault them or anything, but it just makes me uncomfortable. You can't enjoy a meal with people doing that. So you can imagine if you are a big star where everybody knows you and you're trying to go out and have a meal. And here's a story about Elvis. I lived in LA for 30 years, and throughout that, you'd almost see every movie star in some restaurant, or and every recording artist. As much as you would go out, you would see almost everybody, but you would never see Elvis because he could not go out in public and have a public meal or go to a movie or anything because he would just be absolutely mobbed, So I think that was something that really worked against him as far as his mental health and all this other stuff. I always said, well, Elvis, just go out and play a game of golf, get out in the real world and all that, and forget about the drugs and this pill to go to sleep and that pill to wake up and all that. Just get out in the stream of life.
Let nature do it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it because he would be mobbed no matter,
He looks like the sort of bloke too where it wasn't actually about all the paparazzi and, that's Elvis. He was there for the music. He looked like music was just coming out of him. He was just a music man.
But he was very isolated, like like I say, you'd never see him out in a restaurant or a movie theater or anything.
Sad in a way, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's like you're your own prisoner,
Yeah. Let's. We've got a little bit of time left. Let's get to the Wrecking Crew. Mm-hmm. I know we've talked about a lot of things that probably happened in that, Louie, but the Wrecking Crew, that you got to sit in the pit with some mighty players, didn't you?
Yes. Yes, that was quite a thrill. In the early days, when you first go into a session, and you're with these people that you've idolized, and wanted to be in that situation for so long. But it's such a hard thing to get into because producers don't want to try new people.
They just want to know what works.
They got the guys in there that they know, the clock's ticking, the tape's rolling, they're going to play what they're supposed to play, they're not going to make mistakes, they're going to be on time, they're going to be in tune. I don't want to mess with some guy that comes in here that say, hey, I made a mistake,
Yeah.
So they don't like trying new people. And also, this clique of musicians, they're friends of each other themselves, So Hal Blaine, for example, and Tommy Tedesco were very close friends. There's no way Hal would want some new guitar player to come in and replace Tommy because that's his friend.
And that's their hang.
That's this whole thing, yeah. Well, luckily they needed two guitars on most of the sessions.
Yeah.
So I could have come in and play with Tommy and Hal. And so always there was Tommy, and then there would be a Glen Campbell or a JamesBurton or another, lead player. And, as the timing would have it, Glen got a hit record, which took him out,
Opened the seat up.
Opened that seat up. JamesBurton started touring with John Denver and then later with Elvis. So that seat was vacant. At the same time, I've played on this hit and everybody says, who played guitar on Last Train to Clarksville? Let's get him in here. And so I'm sitting there and now every time I'd go into the session, the producer would come out and say, all right, guys, I want Louie to play all the leads, So the other guys would just play the rhythm.
Yeah.
And so I was pretty solidly entranced there from the very beginning. It wasn't like I had to keep proving myself. It's like...
Do you know can you remember who the first artist and first song you did as the Wrecking Crew? Like your first seat?
Well, it would probably be the Carpenters. Yeah, yeah.
That is just ridiculous. That's incredible.
Because Joe Osborne, who was a Wrecking Crew bass player, was friends with Richard and Karen Carpenter. And before they even had a record deal, Joe invited me to go over to their house in a little home studio and do some demos that probably got them their record deal with A&M. And so I got to do all their records with Joe and Hal and Karen and Richard Carpenter. That's usually the only ones that were on that session, was just us three and the Carpenters.
We can just talk about this forever, Louie, but it's really an amazing thing, mate. And we're so proud here at Lindsay Waddington Music and at the studio here to even be involved with you, mate. You're such a beautiful man. You're just a great bloke. It's in our few conversations, it feels like I've known you forever.
Yes.
It's just ridiculous how you can just sort of find your own mob, and it's we're really proud to have you around here, and also too. Check out Louie on all his YouTube platforms and social media platforms. He's got some wonderful things out there, and there's more. We may even have a chat further on down the track. But before we go, now you live in Australia, because it is lunchtime here soon. What do you reckon we might have?
A meat pie.
I love it. Meat pie and then into the guitars. Before we go, is there any other instruments, or it's only guitar?
Well, I play bass. I play a little bit of drums.
Yeah?
Yeah, I love playing drums, which most guitar players do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're terrible, but we love to bang on them. Keyboards are a mystery to me. Yeah.
No, that's the wrong way.
Couldn't figure that one out.
Well, it's been a pleasure, mate, and we're really proud to have you around here, like I said. Mr. Louie Shelton, thank you.
It's my pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed today's episode. For more episodes, you can check out my YouTube channel or the podcast app, and follow my social media at Lindsay Waddington Music. See you all down the track somewhere.